There's a quiet fear that creeps in for a lot of people when retirement starts to feel real. It doesn't always arrive as panic. Sometimes it shows up as a small thought you can't quite shake. Did I do enough? By the way, if you're finding this helpful, the subscribe button lives right down there, and I promise I only make videos worth watching. The real question isn't whether your savings look impressive. It's whether your income can support the life you actually want to live. Think of retirement like a house. Most people spend years staring at the couch, the curtains, the paint on the walls. They want everything to look good from the street, but the part that actually keeps the house standing is the foundation. It sits underground. It doesn't get admired. Nobody takes pictures of it. But if that foundation is solid, the whole house feels safe. If it isn't, everything above it feels a little shaky, no matter how pretty it looks. Your income floor works the same way. It's the invisible base holding up your retirement. Your savings matter, yes, but your monthly income is what tells you whether your life feels steady or stressful. Most people walk into retirement focused on account balances. They look at their 401k, their IRA, their savings, and they ask, is this enough? And if the number doesn't feel big enough, they feel behind. Even if they have something incredibly valuable sitting right in front of them. The goal of retirement is not wealth, it's income. Let that sink in. The goal is not to die with a giant pile of money that looks good on paper. The goal is to live with enough money coming in that you can breathe, pay your bills, enjoy your time, and not feel that silent pressure every time the market has a bad week. Here's the thing. Most people are being told they are behind when they're not. They are measuring the wrong thing. They are staring at pile 2 and barely noticing pile 1. So let me show you what I mean. I want you to imagine your retirement in 2 parts, not one big number, 2 distinct piles. Pile 1 is income that shows up no matter what. Social security, a pension, maybe rental income if it is stable and predictable. Money that keeps coming whether the market is smiling or throwing a tantrum. Pile 2 is your savings, your investments, your accounts. That pile is important too. But here is the critical mistake most people make. They focus almost entirely on pile 2 while barely acknowledging pile 1. And yet pile 1 is often doing far more heavy lifting than people realize. That first pile is the invisible asset. It is the quiet source of stability that doesn't get enough respect. Let's meet 2 people. The first one, let's call him Frank. Frank is 67. He spent over 3 decades working a steady, dependable job. Nothing flashy, no big windfalls, just consistency. If you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't think, there goes someone financially secure. You might actually think the opposite. Frank lives in a modest home. He drives an older car. And if you looked strictly at his savings, you'd probably panic for him. Because Frank has around $140,000 saved. By the standards you've been taught, Frank is behind. But here's what you don't see when you only look at that number. Frank has a monthly pension, he has Social Security income, his home is fully paid off. Every single month, without touching his savings, money shows up, consistently, predictably. Frank is not struggling, Frank is not stressed, Frank is living a life that works. He buys groceries without calculating fear into every purchase. He pays his utilities. He can take his granddaughter out for lunch. He sleeps at night. He may not look rich, but the structure of his life is strong. Now let's meet Gary. Gary did everything right, at least according to the rules he was given. He saved aggressively. He invested diligently. He followed the benchmarks. And today, Gary has $800,000 saved. On paper, Gary is a success story. But Gary doesn't feel like one. Gary still has a mortgage. Gary doesn't have a pension. Gary relies heavily on his investment account to fund his life. Every market fluctuation feels personal. When stocks drop, Gary's stomach drops with them. When inflation slowly raises the price of everything around him, he feels it more because his monthly life depends on pulling from a pile that can shrink at the exact moment he needs it most. Gary has more money than Frank, but less peace. It's not about who has more saved. It's about who has more certainty. Here's a question. If you had to choose between more money or more certainty, which would it be? Keep that in your head as we go. Now listen, the reason this hits so hard is because the retirement conversation most people hear is built around what I call the sticker price illusion. Imagine walking onto a car lot. Every vehicle has a sticker price, bold, official, intimidating. It looks final, it looks like the truth. But if you've ever bought a car, you already know better. There are hidden discounts, dealer incentives, timing advantages, negotiation room. The real price is almost always lower, but the sticker exists to anchor your expectations, to make you feel like anything below it is a win, even if you're still overpaying. Now take that exact same system and apply it to retirement. That giant number you keep hearing thrown around, the one that makes normal people feel small, that's your sticker price. It quietly chips away at confidence before you ever run your own numbers. It silently erodes your sense of progress, and that is dangerous. Because when you keep hearing that retirement requires some huge total, you stop seeing the value of what you already built. You stop seeing paid-off housing as a massive advantage. You stop seeing a pension as a real asset because it doesn't sit in an account with a shiny balance. You stop seeing Social Security as something you earned and start treating it like a side note. That is the quiet lie sitting at the center of this whole topic. It doesn't scream, it doesn't look dangerous. It often comes dressed as guidance. Responsible, helpful, but it nudges people into the same emotional trap. It tells you to compare your life to a giant generic number, instead of asking whether your actual income can support your actual life. You are not behind. In fact, you may already be standing on one of the strongest financial foundations available today. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. Not bragging rights, not a bigger statement balance, peace. Think of your Social Security benefit like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe, one you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every tax contribution, all of it builds pressure in that pipe. Now here's how it works. The longer you wait to turn the faucet on, the stronger the pressure becomes. Wait until 70, the flow is stronger. Turn it on at 62, the flow is lighter. But here's the part most people don't think about. That faucet belongs to you. You paid into it. And if you wait too long to turn it on, some of that water never reaches you. It just stays in the pipe, unused, gone. That does not mean taking it early is always right. It means timing is personal. The question isn't what's the best age, it's what's the best decision for your life right now. If you are healthy, you have longevity in your family, your spouse may depend on your higher benefit, and you have other income sources, waiting can make a lot of sense. But if you need the income now, if your health is uncertain, if taking benefits earlier lets you protect your savings from being drained too fast, that matters too. This is not a morality test. It is not a contest to see who can wait the longest. It is a decision about cash flow, life expectancy, stress, and what kind of retirement you actually want to live. A lot of people quietly carry shame around this. They think taking Social Security at 62 means they failed somehow, as if the earlier start date is for people who didn't plan well. But here's the thing, sometimes taking it earlier is the smarter move because it strengthens your income floor when you need it most. Sometimes it allows your savings to stay invested longer. Sometimes it helps you stop pulling money from accounts during bad market years. That's not laziness, that's strategy. And now we need to talk about something people don't feel until it's already happening. Sequence of returns risk. That phrase sounds technical, so let me make it simple. Picture two people walking across the same frozen lake. Both weigh the same, both take the same number of steps, but one crosses early in the morning when the ice is solid, and the other crosses later when the surface has started to melt. Same walk, very different danger. Retirement works like that. If the market falls early in retirement and you are taking money out at the same time, that damage can hit much harder than a bad market later on. It's not just the loss, it's the loss plus the withdrawals. That is why guaranteed income matters so much. It reduces the amount of walking you have to do on thin ice. What do you think? Are most people actually behind on retirement, or are they just measuring it wrong? Here's where the emotional part comes in. Numbers matter, but how you feel about those numbers, that matters just as much. If your plan makes you afraid to spend, if every purchase feels like a tiny act of betrayal against your future, then even a large account balance can leave you feeling financially stuck. I have seen people with what looks like plenty still act as if every restaurant meal needs a board meeting. I have seen people say no to small joys because a quiet fear keeps whispering, what if this is the purchase that starts the slide? That fear is real, but it does not always come from not having enough. Sometimes it comes from not having clarity. That is why pensions matter more than many people realize. A pension may not look exciting because it doesn't come with market updates and dramatic growth charts. It feels boring, stable, plain. But boring income is beautiful in retirement. Think of a pension like a tree that has already grown in your backyard. You didn't plant it yesterday. You spent years watering it through work, patience, and time. Now it gives shade every month. It may not look flashy, but you would never trade a living tree for a picture of a forest. Yet that's what people do mentally. They ignore the real monthly value of a pension because it doesn't show up as one giant number. Let me ask you, have you ever calculated what your pension is actually worth in real dollars? Most people never do. If a pension pays you a few $1,000s a month for life, that is not some minor side benefit. That can represent hundreds of thousands of dollars of income value, sometimes more, especially when compared with the amount of savings someone without a pension would need to create the same dependable cash flow. But because it doesn't sit in a brokerage account, people undervalue it. Quietly, invisibly, steadily. They keep telling themselves they are behind while standing on top of an income source other people would give almost anything to have. And then there is inflation, the silent eroder. Inflation doesn't arrive with a marching band. It creeps. It nudges. It shows up when groceries cost more than they used to, when insurance slowly raises, when the little things you barely noticed before now require a second thought. This is why retirees with enough money can still feel stuck, because even if today's numbers work, they worry about tomorrow. They worry that what feels manageable now will quietly erode later. That worry is not foolish. It's realism. And in this case, realism isn't negative. It's empowering. Once you name the pressure, you can plan for it. Social Security has cost of living adjustments, which help, and that matters. But those adjustments are not magic. They don't always match your personal reality, especially when healthcare, housing, or insurance rise faster than the average basket used to measure inflation. So yes, COLA helps. But no, it does not remove the need for a buffer. It does not mean you can stop paying attention. That brings us to expenses, and this is where a quiet lie hurts people from the other side. Some people are told they need a huge fortune. Other people are told their expenses will drop so much in retirement that almost everything will be cheaper and easier. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it isn't. Most people underestimate by a lot, especially in the first years. They imagine less driving, fewer work clothes, no commuting. Fine. But then they forget about travel, home repairs, helping family, replacing a car, medical costs, the random real-life stuff that keeps showing up because life does not become perfectly smooth just because your paycheck stops. Think of expenses like weeds in a garden. You can pull the obvious ones. You can keep things tidy. But if you assume nothing new will grow, the whole space gets away from you fast. Retirement expenses behave the same way. The big monthly bills matter, but the smaller, irregular costs are the ones that quietly chip away at confidence because they feel like surprises even when they are normal. Quick question. Have you ever felt guilty about spending money in retirement? That feeling shows up more than you think. A lot of retirees live with a strange tension. They worked for freedom, but once freedom arrives, they feel nervous using it. They have the money, they have enough, at least on paper. But spending from savings feels like watching the walls of the house slowly move inward. Every withdrawal feels permanent. Every market dip makes the account balance look more fragile. And because there is no new paycheck coming, the mind treats spending differently. It feels heavier, more final. That is why two people with the same amount can feel completely different. One person sees a plan, the other sees a countdown. Now let's go back to those two piles. Pile 1 is the money that keeps showing up. Pile 2 is the money you can pull from. If Pile 1 covers most of your basic life, retirement often feels lighter. You can use Pile 2 more thoughtfully. You can keep some invested for growth. You can handle surprises without turning every decision into drama. But if Pile 1 is thin and Pile 2 has to do almost all the work, then even a large balance can feel fragile because you know it is carrying the full weight of your future. This is also where married couples need to have a conversation many keep postponing. Imagine your retirement plan as a two-person kayak. When both people are paddling, the ride feels balanced. But what happens if one paddle disappears? That is what a survivor scenario can feel like if you never planned for it. Social Security changes after one spouse dies. In many cases, one benefit disappears and the survivor keeps the larger one. A pension may continue in full, continue partially, or stop, depending on the option chosen. Certain expenses drop, yes, but many do not. Housing, utilities, insurance, maintenance. The emotional cost is already heavy. The financial confusion makes it worse. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? This matters so much. A decision that looks smart for both of you together can leave the surviving spouse exposed later. Waiting on the higher earner's Social Security can sometimes be less about maximizing your own check and more about protecting the person who may outlive you. Choosing a pension option with survivor benefits can mean accepting a slightly smaller payment now in exchange for more stability later. None of this is fun to think about. I know that. But avoiding it does not make it less real. It just makes the consequences show up later, when choices are smaller and stress is bigger. There is another reason people with enough money still feel stuck. They keep looking for a finish line that moves every time they get near it. One article says, "You need this much." Another expert says, "Actually more." Then inflation headlines start. Then a recession scare. Then a friend mentions long-term care. The number keeps growing in your head, and because the number is blurry, it becomes impossible to feel done. That is exhausting. Stop measuring yourself against everyone else. Stop feeling behind. And start focusing on what truly gives you freedom. Freedom is not a fantasy number. Freedom is knowing what comes in, what goes out, and what kind of cushion keeps you steady. Years ago, the Social Security Administration had an easy calculator many people loved because it produced a simple estimate quickly. The problem was that people used it incorrectly. They treated rough estimates like final promises. They forgot wages change, work histories change, claiming ages change, and assumptions matter. The tool was convenient, but convenience quietly erodes accuracy when people stop asking better questions. That story is a good lesson for retirement planning as a whole. A fast answer feels comforting, but a simple answer is not always a useful answer. You do not need a magic number handed to you. You need clarity about your own situation. I want to know, have you ever felt like you were doing everything right but still felt behind? You are not alone. Because that feeling does not always come from math. Sometimes it comes from comparison. Sometimes it comes from uncertainty. Sometimes it comes from years of hearing a message that never really matched your life. If you spent decades being told that success means a bigger pile, then of course it feels strange to admit that what you really want is a stronger faucet, a firmer foundation, a simpler plan, and more peace. But that is what many people are actually searching for. Not more complexity, not more financial theater, just enough dependable income to make the next chapter feel safe. And let me say something that does not get said enough. Retirees often underestimate the emotional value of paid-off housing. If your home is fully paid off, that is not just a nice detail. That changes the entire rhythm of your monthly life. It's like carrying a backpack up a hill and finally being allowed to take it off. You still have a journey ahead. You still need water, food, and energy. But the weight is different now. A mortgage in retirement can be manageable, yes, but a paid-off home can quietly lower the amount of income you need every single month for the rest of your life. That matters. That counts. That is part of your financial strength, even if nobody on television shouts about it. At the same time, I don't want to romanticize simplicity in a way that ignores real risk. Healthcare costs can rise. Long-term care can disrupt the most careful plan. Family emergencies happen. Markets can disappoint. This is why you don't just want enough. You want enough plus breathing room. You want margin. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because life does not move in a straight line. A good retirement plan is not a tightrope. It is a bridge with railings. Think about retirement planning like packing for a long road trip. Some people obsess over how big the trunk is. They keep asking, do I have enough space, enough bags, enough supplies? But a better question is whether the car runs well enough to get you where you want to go. A huge trunk in a car with a weak engine does not create confidence. In retirement, the engine is your monthly income. The trunk is your savings. Both matter, but one is doing the actual moving. This is also why full retirement age matters more than people think. Even if the term sounds dry. It is not some magical birthday where life changes overnight. It is more like a midpoint marker on a hiking trail. Claim before that marker and your monthly benefit is reduced. Claim after it, and delayed credits can raise the payment until age 70. But none of that tells you what you should do by itself. The question isn't, what's the best age? It's what's the best decision for your life right now. If waiting gives you a stronger lifelong floor without creating stress today, great. If waiting means draining savings, losing sleep, and walking on thinner ice, that matters too. Think about this. If guaranteed income was the only thing that mattered, would you feel better or worse about where you stand? A lot of people answer that question in a surprising way. They realize they would feel better, not worse. Why? Because dependable income removes so many tiny daily negotiations with yourself. Can we take the trip? Can we help our daughter? Can we replace the water heater without feeling reckless? Can we enjoy dinner out without hearing that little voice in our head? Certainty does not solve everything, but it softens the emotional friction of retirement in a way big balances sometimes do not. And there is one more trap that keeps people stuck. They think every dollar in savings is meant to be protected at all costs. They treat the account like museum glass. Look, but never touch. But retirement is not a museum. It is a season of life. Some money is meant to support living. The goal is not to avoid every withdrawal. The goal is to make withdrawals in a way your plan can handle. That is very different. Once you understand the difference, guilt starts to loosen its grip. You stop seeing every distribution as a loss and start seeing it as part of the job that money was always meant to do. Let that sink in. The money was never supposed to sit there forever just proving you were disciplined. It was supposed to turn into groceries, medicine, weekends away, visits with family, and a life that still feels like yours. When you remember that, retirement stops feeling like a test you are failing and starts feeling like a plan you can use. Here's what I want you to do. First, figure out your income floor. What money is coming in every month, no matter what? Social Security, pensions, anything stable and predictable. That number matters more than you've been told. Next, calculate your real expenses, not based on your old salary, based on your actual life. Housing, food, healthcare, travel, gifts, repairs, the things you truly care about and the things that keep showing up whether you like them or not. Then find the gap. What is the difference between your dependable income and your actual expenses? That gap is what your savings need to cover, not some giant generic benchmark, not a sticker price designed to scare you, just the gap. Then I want you to build a buffer, not a fantasy. Look at what would help you sleep better at night. Maybe that means keeping a cash reserve so you are not forced to sell investments in a bad year. Maybe it means delaying one big trip so you can strengthen your margin first. Maybe it means rethinking when to take Social Security. Maybe it means finally asking what your pension is truly worth. Maybe it means sitting down with your spouse and walking through the survivor plan you have both been avoiding. None of that is glamorous. All of it is powerful. Let me ask you something. Do you know what your monthly income will actually look like when you retire? Be honest with yourself, because once you know that number, something shifts. The fog starts to lift. The giant, scary total loses its power over you. You stop asking, am I rich enough? And start asking, is my life covered? That is a much better question. It is grounded. It is personal. It leads somewhere useful. And if your answer today is not quite, that is okay too. Clarity is still a win. Now you know what needs attention. Maybe the gap is smaller than you feared. Maybe one extra year of work changes everything. Maybe downsizing is not a defeat, but a choice that buys peace. Maybe part-time income in the early years of retirement makes the whole plan stronger. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You need clarity. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. But if you understand your numbers, if you build your income, if you define your life on your terms, you don't chase anymore. You decide. And that is the shift from fear to clarity, from chasing to choosing, from not enough to enough. Retirement isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something new. A new rhythm, a new pace, a new way of living. And the goal isn't just to survive it. The goal is to enjoy it, to wake up without financial stress, to make decisions without fear, to live with confidence, not hesitation. If this video made you think differently about your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even deeper.